My name is architect Lape Saleh. I'm the principal at Habitat and Living Design Limited. I'm an architect, interior designer, and this is 21 Park. It's a project that we worked on in 2018, I think, to 2020. But I think the design work actually started in 2016. It's definitely become a specialty. And we have realized in the process that the difference between architecture and interior design is actually quite a lot. And so when our architects come into the office, we let them know that you're going to be doing architecture and interior design and landscape design and architectural advocacy through AD Connect. So we just make sure that we have well-rounded architects and they understand that if you don't design from the inside out, you leave out a lot of information, and then you forget about the user experience, which is ultimate at the end of the day. How is someone going to live and work or use this building? So interiors are very, very important. Yes, so the first thing you need to know about 21 Park is that we were not the first architects to start the job. She actually had an initial idea or sketches of what she wanted to do. Now, why she approached us was because she felt we had the capability to actually realize her vision. She had not been able to get that exactly what she was looking for. And so she had been shopping around for architects, even though we were familiar. And so when we came in, the very first thing we did was that we reoriented the building. So we said, you're coming down this road and you're going down that hill, and then you now see this building. It was actually backing that view originally. So that's the first thing we did, was reorient the whole building. Now, in terms of bringing the client's vision to light, the client had a vision of a mall that would be different. Now, we have 1,001 shopping malls in Abuja, but we wanted something that would stand out, that would be looked at different, function different, and be almost, so we're trying to marry actually, international type of malls with our local type of shopping malls. So if you look at our typical shopping malls, it's usually this L shape. It's open, there are windows on both sides. Whereas if you look at international shopping malls, they are closed. They tend to rely heavily on services and mechanical ventilation and mechanical lighting. They make sure that you enter into the building while 21 Park is open. Very more like our own kind of malls and our shopping malls. So we're able to combine those two concepts. Yeah, and then we were very determined not to have your typical shopping mall. We're determined that along this street, it will stand out, it will look different. And one of the things we're able to do, apart from just the general facade and the finishes, was incorporating green. You see, like around the building, you see there's lots of green. Another thing that I'd like to bring out from the initial concept was that it was a brown site. So there was an existing building, which was, I believe, a health building. So there was a health and wellness building. So there was a pool at the back, and then there was a main building. So we actually had to demolish that. Now the demolition process was actually quite arduous. It was quite difficult, and it started in rainy season. So we experienced a lot of issues there. Now the site is also very sloping. So she wanted to make sure that she was able to harness that slope as compared to just ignoring it. So the first thing we did was actually create the parking. Now, initially, she had a concept of having basement parking, which was underground, which would have cost her a lot more money and even maybe brought in opportunities for issues. But instead, we said you can create the same basement parking without closing it off, without putting it under the ground, physically. So that's one of the things that we're also able to do for the client. We had two challenges during this project. The first was that the quality of the steel and concrete that we were getting was changing, because what we did was we did pre-mixed concrete. So we had a subcontractor who was supplying the concrete. And later on, when we came back to do our test, we found that it was found wanting. So we had to literally stop work completely, shore up every area, and break and cast again in many places. So the first thing when you want to have those kind of situations is that you work with professionals. Our structural engineer and our builder were very experienced. And when they were casting the floor, they noticed a difference in the concrete mix compared to what the supplier had been giving us before. And so immediately they had finished and cast and it had set a little bit, they now did their tests. And of course it was found wanting. Right from the beginning, we had a project manager. The project manager was actually the person working with the client. Project manager happened to be my husband. He runs a project management company and a construction company. So he was working with her actually before we came on as the architects. And it was like almost like an open, transparent process where we kind of pitched our concept to the client alongside about 3 or 4 other architects, and she felt more comfortable with our concept, and that's how we got the job. So from the beginning, there was a project manager, there was an architect, interior, because our company had architecture, interior, and landscaping, as in actually certified professionals. So we had all those 3 under the design consultants. Then we had the structural engineer, obviously, the mechanical and electrical engineers, the builder was involved. And one thing that we did, and we still do, is that we create an integrated team. So from the very beginning, we are working with all our consultants to say, this is the concept that we're working with. Give your input now at the early stages. Now, when you get to, of course, preliminary drawings, working drawings, different stages of the project, we carry them along. Especially when we have sort of like design meetings, even before we actually move to site, we made sure that our engineers and other professionals were carried along. There's a separate problem where we couldn't find quality iron in the market. And so anytime we'd have to source, steel, we would take it to the lab for testing. So we would either go to, there's a private lab somewhere in Jahi that we used to use, and then we also used to go to NIBRI, National Building Road Research Institute. Yeah, so we are just paying attention. I think that's safe to say. First of all, like you said, when you have professionals you're working with, they're experienced, and that's one thing that I've noticed about a lot of developments, whether it's real estate or large-scale development, is that if you don't work with professionals, you lose a lot. These are people who have experience, and then it's okay for you to say you want to cut costs by having some in-house architects and all of that. But you always have those consultants that have that experience, requisite experience to bring to the table. So literally our builder noticed the quality didn't look, the way it was supposed to. And we took it for testing, and it showed that, so I think, there's always, there's called visual inspection. Yes. Then there's now the actual, I think it's called, it's not just visual, there's a step further before the actual break and bring out and test. So there's 3 levels of inspection. And from his visual inspection, he felt that this was faulty. By the time we tested it a little bit on site, we noticed also showing that it had issues. By the time we took it for the final test, it was confirmed. Honestly, I think it would be difficult for an architect to detect, just visually speaking. You might have a lot of experience which would expose you to that knowledge. But the truth is that when the architect is doing everyone else's job, their own job actually suffers. So it is good to work with professionals that know what they are doing and rely on that experience to support your job as, the master coordinator, the master builder. It is possible that an architect would have detected it, but unlikely. We did the basic architectural finish, but the interiors were done by individuals taking up different spaces. Now, I would say we produced full interior designs actually, and we did a couple of samples for people to see what it would look like. But in terms of actually selection of the final finish, no. In fact, we left the project maybe when the project was about 80 to 90% complete. And the owner took over the final finishing of the building, because she actually enjoys that process and she wanted to be more hands-on. So one of the things about the external finishing, we have a couple of, I think, things I'd like to highlight. Right. First of all was the green walkway that we created. When you go up to the first floor, which is actually technically the ground floor, right? There is a green walk which you don't see that common, as in it's not commonly put on the first floor. You usually see it on the ground level. Now, to achieve that, we had to work, with our landscape architect to do some really good details to make sure that whatever we're doing there, the water would not affect the concrete, that the cantilever would not be over burdened by the weight of the soil and the plants that will come in after. So that's one of the things I like, the level of detail that we put into that. And it was a bit of a sacrifice as well, because we also had to let go of some space on that walk and cantilever out a little bit just to create that. But as you can see, it's a very important feature of the building and something that you notice almost immediately. That, oh, okay, this building actually has green going up, the wall. So that's one feature I'd like to highlight. Another feature actually, which is quite interesting, is the curtain wall. So the selection of the accessories for the curtain wall, this is a spider accessory for the curtain wall, was something that I would say was going out of fashion at the time that we chose it. But we still wanted to use it because it was distinctive and also allowed us to use a wider span of glass versus, smaller with more mullions. So this one allowed us to have this span of glass that was, unbroken. Another issue we had concerning that actually was that the client had ordered the glass and the mullions and everything from China. And unfortunately, she didn't deal with some very straightforward people. And so they claimed they had produced the glass and they were now saying, okay, send us the balance. And she was like, no, you come and this. And the thing is that for us to be able to order, because that's something that should be done, I hope it's something that people can learn. If you want to do things like curtain wall or fittings in a building, the subcontractors, especially subcontractors, should be on ground. They should be there to take as-built measurements in order to know how to install their whatever element they are working on. That's number one. Number two, the architect must be aware that you are not responsible for shop drawings. It is the subcontractor or specialist contractor that produces shop drawings. You produce a design and tell them this is what I want, and they produce the shop drawings because they are the manufacturer or the installer. That's number two. Number three, we went out of our way actually because the company was not based here. So we went out of our way to do serious detailed shop drawings for the curtain wall. I mean, we went down to the connections to the slab. We went and did our own research and found ways of, so that was enough information given to them, but still they failed to deliver. Now, it now entered into Alibaba court. Yes. And we now started exchanging letters. This is where contract administration comes in. So by the time I was able to, I highlight very clearly with timelines, with dates, how we had communicated, the level of information we had given them, and to show again that in standard form of building contracts, it was actually their job to make sure they sent a representative to take as-built measurements, not the job of the architect on site. Despite that, we still try to facilitate the process, and still they failed to deliver. And so because of the way we were able to present our case, she was able to win the case. However, she was just able to basically get her funds back, and she now contracted a local contractor to do the work. The last thing I'd like to highlight on the elevation actually is the metal work that we have, the metal screen we have on the pent floor. We did it according to the Fibonacci series. It's like 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4 multiples. So the Fibonacci series is actually multiples of a number that goes in a spiral and goes round and increases according to 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4. So we use that actually to design the mullions for a screen wall. If I was to look at the signature, and this is something that we looked back on, because the thing is that as a designer, as much as you want to have a signature, you also have to meet every brief differently. So it's not, you can't be imposing what you think is your signature at every point in time. But if I was to look at something that is quite distinctive in most of our buildings, it would be the roof. It will be the roof. The way we handle the roof. First of all, we have learned how to do flat roofs in a way that actually is structurally very sound and enhances the overall look of the building without costing the client a lot more. Now, by the time you look at most of the buildings in Nigeria and Abuja, you have those hip or gable roofs. that cost a lot of money and apparently are not really serving the function they're supposed to serve, which is, snow. We have rain here, but we don't have the kind of rain that requires a very steep slope. It's water. Water will find its level, even on a plumber slope. So that's one thing we'll be able to do. The roof has always been quite distinctive. This project, the wrapper project, I would say, even greenhouse where our office is, our roofs are quite distinctive, and that's something that you can notice up front. So 2 things. I would like them, first of all, to recognize they're in a building with a difference. We put the user, the consumer first. One of the things that we had when we had our original drawings or designs was, only one elevator, only one set of stairs. And we said, no, that's not possible. There has to be 2 in the 2 different wings. It has to be accessible. It has to be wheelchair accessible. Although they haven't installed the wheelchair ramp that we had created, as we created the design for the staircase where there's a wheelchair ramp going to the first floor. From that point on, it's the elevator. So the first thing I would like people to experience is just, I'm in a building with a difference that has considered, the humans that will be using it, which is user experience. One area, for example, that had come up when we're trying to increase the floor space, which is a balancing act between what the client wants in terms of profitability and what actually can be achieved, with standards. So we had tried to explain that the dimensions were not going to be enough for public passage of a corridor, which was minimum of 1.5. But even then, we felt for the kind of mall we're trying to build, that wouldn't do. So we needed to widen it. And in order to explain this to the client, we actually had to do a 3D animated walkthrough on the corridor to show that 2 people cannot pass with that dimension.
To convince the client.
Yes, and that was completely done, digitally. That was before we had reached the stage of work, right? That would actually, where we had built it. We had not built it yet. We're just trying to, from the drawings, we're trying to explain to the client. So that's something I would like people to understand, that a lot of thought went into the user experience for the people that are going to come into the building when they come here. The second thing I would like people to recognize about the building, or feel when they come into the building, is that we are in a place that is different. It's not your typical mall, it's not your, and one thing we really wanted to achieve for the client is value. In that, when you spend that extra money or spend that extra time on those details, you will receive the value. Before the building was finished, you already had off-takers. People were ready to rent for 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, because they could see that this building was different, and they could see that it was well positioned to allow them to make profit on whatever business they decide to run here. And so that's something that I would encourage a lot of architects to do. It's one thing to have your wonderful ideas and all of that, but if you don't create a product that your clients can make use of and be profitable in it, whether it's in a house and you want to have energy efficiency to save them costs, or it's in a building like this where you want to make sure that when the building goes on the market, they're going to get their full value and maybe even a bit more. That's something I'd like people to know about the building. I always tell people that for clients, right, do your research first and then hand over completely. So do your research on the professionals that you want to hire. Look at their previous works or their capacity or their potential, right? See how you're engaging with them. Are they important? Do they take documentation seriously? Are they engaging with you in a professional manner? Are they talking with some level of understanding? Because I wouldn't say experience is, invaluable. However, there are people who have the capacity to step up when, given the opportunity. So I wouldn't say you must get a totally, completely experienced person, but it depends on the level of the work you're doing. So for a building like this, I would say, first of all, as a client, do your homework on the people you're working with and then hand over. Because when you have clients that are involved in the process that are not professionals, it's actually a bit of a struggle. Sometimes they don't understand certain things and that can be a problem. So you as a professional, your job sometimes is advocacy and education and making the client understand why you're taking certain decisions and why some things are important. Like I gave the example of the walkway, and once we explained that, the client was completely on board. Another thing I would like people to understand is that The difficulty in construction and design and building and all of that is actually just reflective of life. There's just difficulty in everything. If you understand that there is no project you will do that you won't have some level of difficulty, it makes you a lot more resilient to be able to fight back, push back, get up again, like you said, when you fall down and all of that. Because if you do not, if you feel that it's supposed to go 100% well all the time, you take it harder, you blame yourself, and then you will not really be able to see solutions. But the truth is that if you understand that the basic project on a normal day must have some issues, then you are better prepared. Now, with each project, we try to do lessons learned, where we're like, okay, what did we learn from this? What did we fail? What can we do better? And we try to put in processes that would actually help us with the next time. Another thing I'd like to encourage people as well to do is not to shy away from difficult things. Like I said, the site was a brown site. There was existing demolition that had to be done in the middle of the rainy season. The site had an extreme slope, having to deal with the drainage on site. Working with the landscape architect made it a dream. The way she designed the drainage of this site was just, exemplary. It was a wonderful job that she did. We were able to do that successfully, create property. And in the basement was also a bit of an issue because we're supposed to have a double level parking basement. But because of the cost of the land and the client wanted to actually optimize her space, and she decided to convert one of the floors to a shop space in order to be able to make some of the profits back. Unfortunately, that ran afoul of FCDA's rules concerning this, so we had to take some time to redesign the entire site to create additional parking to be able to meet the requirements. So we were able to do it. But my point is that when things are difficult or not straightforward, we shouldn't shy away from it. It's for you to step up. And if you have a solution-oriented perspective, you'll find the solutions. But if you're looking at the problem, it's very difficult for you to see the solution. Yes, I have a problem. Okay, what is the solution? So even our young architects on site, we always tell them that don't come to me with a problem, come to me with the solution. Maybe one final thing we learned from this project, honestly, is that, like you said, first of all, work with professionals. Client management is very important. And finally, it is that when given the opportunity, step up. Yes, first of all, I'm very, very happy that something like this exists because I wasn't even aware. I mean, I'd seen your work before, but not in this particular sort of featuring architects. Now, this is very important work for two reasons. First of all, the more architects are identified with the building, so we have that problem here, and I don't know why it's so bad, where you see a building, you hear about the developer, you hear about the owner, but you hardly ever hear about the designer. You hardly ever hear, you don't know who did what. But if we champion our architects more, it means that there's a value add to working with an architect. So whenever MR Group wants to do something big, they'll say, oh, let's do Zaha Hadid. Just adding the name of those architects to that project has already upgraded the value of that project. We don't have that here because our architects are not being celebrated. The design processes that we have discussed, the ideas and the concepts are things that most people don't know. Somebody took their time to, yes, a lot of people think architects are engineers and don't really understand what we do. So what you're doing is so important because the more you advocate for architects, the more people will say, okay, yes, I do want to work with that architect. Oh, I like what they did there. Oh, you mean I can't achieve this on my own? I actually need a professional to work with. And if you're going to a proper professional architect with a firm who is also training younger ones, you understand that they have a reputation that they're also trying to protect. And sometimes that's more important to them than the next paycheck. And so these are things that what you are doing is very, very important, and please, you need to keep it up.